Okay, welcome everybody. We are live here, Brass Tacks Hard Facts live tonight. You got myself, Chris Martin, always with Jerry Herbst, and we have the man Jerry Knapp with us tonight. Jerry Knapp has done several Brass Tacks episodes for us. One of my favorites actually is not what we're going to talk about tonight, but that's on the hose kinking. The article Chris Flatley, Tim Pillsworth, and him did in the mid-2000s. Highly recommend it. But tonight we're going to talk about air entrainment. So air entrainment, I think since the UL thing, kind of a newer term in the fire service. 5 years ago, people weren't talking about this, but Jerry was. So Jerry's done a lot of work on this, and he's kind of tell us about his story. You've seen him around. He's an FDIC instructor. The other night, even for my own department, I taught a recruit academy video that was recorded that we could then show to our recruits later. And it was the fire engineering curriculum on basic fire check, which Jerry Knapp did. So I know you've seen his name and his face in places, and he's been in the fire service for some time. So he's going to share some stories and experience with us tonight. And I'm going to throw it off to Jerry Herbst real quick.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're just moving right along. We're proud to have a good buddy, Jerry Knapp, on tonight. And before I put it over to Jerry, it seems he's always involved with very landmark stuff. He's a deep thinker. He's been on the job for a long time. And it's the type of guy you really want to sit down and have a coffee with and go deep. So Jerry, give us a little background on yourself, but also what drew you to air entrainment as a subject to go deeper into?
Sure. Thanks. First, I want to say hi to everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Elkhart series here. We had a fatal fire early in my career. We lost 3 kids actually, and what really got me going on interior fire attack and air entrainment was I had the 2 kids were already in body bags and in a coroner's van, and I ended up having the last child. He was 5 years old, and they handed him down the ladder to me. I was at the bottom of the ladder, and I cradled him and took him to the medical examiner's truck. What really freaked me out was there was no place to put him. His brother and sister were in there, and I kind of panicked for a minute. I didn't know what to do, and then I just stacked him up on his brother and sister. So that was a long time ago, but it really got me thinking about we need to do everything we can to understand interior fire attack, and air entrainment was just one of those things. Kind of following that in the probably mid 80s, early 80s, Andy Fredericks and I and Joel Kanaski and a few other guys, we'd meet at the fire training center on Sunday morning. One of us would bring a pumper, and we tried different stretches and tried different nozzles and tried different fire attacks, and so we just kind of stumbled through that. So that was kind of an awakening there. And in 2004, Timmy Pillsworth and Chris Flatley and myself, we did some experiments at our fire training center on air entrainment. What really stimulated that was I got so tired of hearing it. You got to move the nozzle clockwise. You got to move it. Nobody could tell me why. So, and that's something that's been around the fire service for a long time. So my mom used to call me Doubting Thomas. I always wanted to know why, So we started playing around in our burn building with no fire, but just to see what these hose streams would do. And we just kind of started with a blank slate. And we learned, I'll show you a slide in a little bit, but we learned that there was some things going on in the atmosphere and in that room, that building that we didn't understand. So we just kind of pushed it a little bit further. Of course, about in the 80s, early 90s, the straight stream fog battle was kind of raging in the fire service. So we kind of looked at that and played with that a little bit. And that was back in 2004. So we learned a little bit from that. Published a couple articles in fire engineering, and we looked at the volume of air being moved and pretty much what UL did in 2015. And I really appreciated Steve Kerber invited me to be on the tech panel for the fire attack study. So, Robin Zavota, Keith Stakes, Mike All, I was honored to work with those guys and learn a little bit more and frankly get some better measurements than we were able to get in Rockland. But we kind of broke the ice on it, and that was a lot of fun. So that's kind of where it started.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jer. Chris, why don't we let's launch the subject? Maybe put up a little part of the segment that we're going to focus on tonight. Get things moving.
Yeah, sounds good. Actually, what I'm going to do here before we do that, and I don't want to jump ahead of Jerry Knapp here. I got the two Jerrys tonight, so I don't want to. I feel humbled here as the junior man, and I don't want to say Herbst and Knapp. So I guess I could be respectful of rank or whatever you guys prefer. But before we get going, I'm going to we're going to show a segment of the episode for those that aren't familiar with it. I think it'll paint a little bit better picture of what we're talking about, and then we'll throw up a couple slides that Jerry Knapp provided us, and we'll kind of talk through those, and then we'll have some time for Q&A or whatever. So anyway, the video I'm going to show you now, actually, we show this in our Brass Tacks Hard Facts class for those who've been into it. And we showed it, I think, in our first episode with Brian Kerr. But this is doing a little bit of the shot setup. So for every one of these episodes you see, this one was pretty well involved. The shot setup, this could take, I think this probably took us almost 2 hours to set this up just right with GoPros and streamers and everything else. This one was pretty much well involved for a 6-minute piece. So I'm just going to play this one for you guys real quick, so you kind of see that what goes behind it, and then we'll show a little bit of the episode and get rolling here.
Between my hand and the ceiling is where it should. Yes, so you can see this we have it put away. So tip it a little higher, down. I think we can tip it more. Hey Chris, sir, you won't be in charge of the GoPro? This is kind of good. This is going to be a long word. Probably standing. It's still at 60 frames, 40.7. Why do you have to go? We'll have to turn off my ears on. We'll have to do your voice.
All right, so now we're going to throw up the episode. We're just going to do part of it here. I'm going to jump real quick.
To move the entire volume of air
is good
in that room,
and good for your fire
and the
attack.
heat and products of
If there is
combustion
not
it
a vent
contains
ahead of you,
in 15
the less
to 20
air you
seconds.
stir up, the
If you have
better.
a vent opening ahead
Here's
of the
an
hose
interesting
line,
demonstration of
moving
how
a
much
lot of
actual
air
energy and
stirring
how
up the fire
powerful the
environment,
air
the
is entrained
simultaneous
by your hose stream
extinguishment
really
and
is.
cooling
There is
and the
enough
movement
energy
of that
transferred
heat
from
and
the
products
pump
of
to the
combustion
stream
out the
to
window
move the nearby
is
air
good
fast
and good
enough,
for your fire
hard enough,
attack.
and
If
consistently
there's not
enough
a
to
vent
break
ahead
the
of you,
surface tension
the
of the
less
water,
air you
cause
stir
it to
up,
form
the
a water
better.
spout as shown here.
Here's an
Our fire
interesting
stream contains a
demonstration
large
of how
amount
much
of energy
actual
and
energy
can have a
and how powerful the air is entrained by your hose stream really is. There is enough energy transferred from the pump to the stream to move the nearby air fast enough, hard enough, and consistently enough to break the surface tension of the water, cause it to form a water spout as shown here. Our fire stream contains a large amount of energy and can have a huge impact on the fire environment. Consider the following data recently published by Underwriters Laboratories. The title of the research is The Impact of Fire Attack Utilizing Interior and Exterior Streams on Firefighter Safety and Occupant Survival. As this bar graph shows, the air movement caused by one type of nozzle held stationary, and then the same nozzle moved in a typical fireground fashion shows vastly different amount of air movement. It shows that our commonly used nozzles and fire tech techniques move considerable amounts of air inside the fire compartment. So what do all these hard facts mean to us on the fire ground? First, we must always consider the massive amounts of air our fire streams have on the fire attack process while inside the fire compartment, with special consideration toward the ventilation condition. Second, we can see in these very simple tests that a solid or straight stream being moved in the patterns we have been taught have similar air movement volume
Unmute everybody here, and then Jerry, I'm going to throw up your first slide.
That'd be great, Chris.
There's
Thank
a
you.
little audio issue there, guys. Again, if you missed part of it, it's up on our YouTube channel. Gotta love doing this live. All right, standby. All right, here we go. Slide one for you, Jerry.
Thanks, Chris. So here's where we really started. No fire in the building. That's why the firefighter there doesn't have any turnout gear on. And it seems like whenever we test something, it's either like -400 or +900. So it was like 95 degrees this particular day. So again, we were just testing to see what was going on with the stream, and we operated this hose stream, this fog stream, and we call this fog nozzle ricochet. There was so much air entrained in that stream that it overpressurized that room and drove it back where there was a gap kind of near the ceiling, between the stream and the ceiling. And actually there was an air current, a consistent air current driving that air back. So we kind of looked at it and said, well, gee whiz, if you know, this is going into a fire area and the fire's not being knocked down, we could be driving those hot gases and steam back on ourselves. So the first time we did this, we did it into a closed room, and we expected to see this. The slide you're seeing is toward an open door. So there's a 3-foot wide by 8-foot high door, just about 8 foot to the left of where that stream is, and kind of facing the side that you're looking at. So we looked at that, and then we said, geez, we've been told if you point a fog stream toward a door or window, everything goes out the window. So we stood there and scratched our heads and said, well, you know what? That's not true. So we kind of wondered what else wasn't true. So Chris, we could have the next slide.
Yeah.
So we designed a test apparatus, and this is out of the fire engineering article. It's a view into a shipping container. I forget the dimensions of it right now, but we put a draft wall in the middle and put a heating, ventilating, air conditioning balancing unit in there. And what that unit does, it's like a hood, and it goes over a vent in the ceiling, and it'll tell you how many cubic feet of air per minute are moving through it. So what we thought is toward the bottom or the left side there, we had an open door. We snuck our hose line in underneath the draft wall, which was, excuse me, just 2x4s and plastic. So we had it sealed up pretty good. The opening was 2 foot by 2 foot, which is where we made it that size because that's where the measuring device went in. And we flowed the hose out an open door, actually open end of the shipping container on the other end, which is kind of toward the top right of this slide. So we got some measurements, and they kind of mimicked what UL got with a lot more. Our data was a little bit low, but we saw some interesting things. We obviously were able to measure the flow from a fog stream, which was much more than a solid bore. I saw a question pop up a little while ago about have we measured the airflow with a half bale solid bore, and we did. We got about 1,000 CFM, cubic feet per minute, with a half bale about 6 feet back from the opening. Now, there's a couple things that you have to consider is how far back from the opening you are, how long the stream is. The longer the stream, the greater the airflow you have. So there's no one size fits all for this. There's a lot of variables. I'll talk a little bit later about some airflow numbers, and they kind of vary a little bit. So it's not real hard science. It's not as good as Jerry and Stretch do with GPMs and PSI. It's a little bit looser than that. A lot of variables. Chris, next slide, please.
Yeah.
So that's 2004. We're going to jump here to around 2015, I think, when FDNY and NIST and UL were working on Governor's Island. You've probably all seen this. Again, this is straight out of the UL UL studies and FDNY and Governor's Island. And I use this in a lot of training. This is a basement fire, and the old idea, we used to protect the stairs for a basement fire and try to push the line down. I call it pushing it down the chimney. So this slide is very important in terms of air entrainment, because if you look in the lower left, when you're and during this test, this was a live fire test of a row house, a basement fire in a row house. With the line pointed down the stairs, the fire actually got worse. The temperature got hotter. And what's the reason for that? Because our stream is injecting air down into that basement. So we all know that so here's where kind of air entrainment, which is really kind of boring, but couples with fire development that I don't think we've done a good job understanding, structured fires. Here's where that comes together. So we think we're doing a good thing. We've had this tactic, we've all been taught you got to push down the stairs, that's where real men do it. And the data shows that the fire's getting worse because we're shoving air in there. Well, now we kind of know that, okay? So I think the most important points I want to get across to everybody tonight is that just because we've been taught to do something a particular way, or just because the senior guy tells you that's the way it is, we need to put data to that. We need to measure it. I have a friend, Bill Quinn, from Bergen County, New Jersey, just the next county south of us, and he's a rabid fireman, and and he uses this analogy. He goes, "We believe our thermal imagers, we believe the temperature in the thermal imagers, we believe the pressure gauges on our pumpers, we believe everything that's got a gauge or a number on it, but we don't believe the data that we see from these fires, test fires." So we need to think about doing that. We need to measure stuff. I know Jerry Herbst, his favorite passion is you got to know what you're flowing, and you don't know what you're flowing out of your hose line, nozzle, unless you measure it. So we got to put numbers to this stuff. We've got to get away from, this is the way we do it. Again, I talked early on. We measured the airflow of moving the nozzle clockwise or counterclockwise. We got the same measurement. Okay, now I think this is pretty important. We got the same measured air flowing away from the nozzle. So if you just look at the data, it doesn't matter what direction you operate the nozzle, clockwise or counterclockwise. But if you take, now Jeff Shoup is a good friend of mine, probably seen more fire than all of us put together. He strongly believes from his experience that if you operate the nozzle clockwise, it drives the fire away better. So we need to blend those two. We need to blend that fire experience and blend that data and figure out what the answer is. And a lot of what Jeff talks about is that the teeth on the nozzle, if you're using a combination nozzle, the teeth spin clockwise. We know that's true. Is that why clockwise works better than counterclockwise? I don't know. We haven't tested it yet, but we've taken that next step. So again, it's that blending of don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. That experience is important. It's critical to use that experience. And it's just as equally important as to take the data and try to get something to come together.
That's really I think a lot of these studies come out, articles, whatever, and we want to be really quick to change everything we do. But that tribal knowledge experience kind of goes to the wayside because this new 700-page document came out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of UL, but and if you really take the time to get into that, and it's painful, and the Navy SEALs say there's no excellence without pain. Well, you want to read that 700-page document, that's pain. Yeah. The UL, I think, from what I've seen and been involved with it, it really supports what the senior guys have said all along. Yeah, we need to make a few changes, and we learned a few things, but for the most part, we're really doing things right. But now we got numbers to go with it. So just I'll put my soapbox away on that one.
All right, I'll get a slide here,
please.
And I apologize. Somebody asked if we can make them bigger. Unfortunately, we can't. But I could potentially post them up tomorrow in our feed if or private message us and we'll send them to you.
Okay, what this slide is showing is we're seeing, you know, have that slide in front of me, but I think the blue is a solid bore nozzle. The blue is a solid.
Blue is a solid stream and red is straight stream.
So what that's showing is that the first bar graph on the left side shows that we'll just go with a solid bore for now. The solid bore is going to entrain about 500 cubic feet of air per minute if you hold it straight. If you hold it straight. If you rotate that nozzle or move it like we've been told, we're looking at increasing that to around 5,000 cubic feet of air per minute. So just to give you some numbers, a 15-foot by 12-foot by 8-foot room, which is kind of a good-sized room in a house, is about 1,500 cubic feet, about 1,500 cubic feet. So if we're moving our nozzle in a circle and we're moving 3, 4, 5,000 cubic feet of air per minute in, we're trying to squeeze a lot of air in that room. So if it's not vented, we're going to make what I call fireman soup. We're just bringing that hot air down on us. Yeah, we may be knocking the fire down. And now's a good time to remember this. We talk about fires, right? We could talk about a one-room fire, right? And I was at a one-room fire last summer that we put out with a garden hose. That's a whole nother story. But you know, with 5 gallons a minute through the picture window because we were on scene before the rigs were. But so don't base your whole fire attack, and I've said this for a long while. Don't base your whole fire attack of success or failure on a one-room fire. We've all put one-room fires out with a garden hose or a booster line or whatever. So think about this in I call it the big picture. You know, the one-room fire is kind of what we can comprehend. Think about a warehouse. Think about industrial occupancy where you know your 20 seconds of water doesn't put this fire out. So that kind of leads us to where is that air going? So if we're moving 5,000 cubic feet of air per minute, and again, let me give you a scale. An electric smoke ejector, kind of the old-fashioned smoke ejector, about 18 inches square, about a 3/4 horsepower motor, that's going to move about 7,000 cubic feet of air per minute. So our hose line, if we're operating in a circle or a Z or a N or whatever, we're moving pretty much close to that, kind of in that ballpark. So none of us would think about going to a fire with a smoke ejector under one hand, a fan under one arm, you know, and a nozzle on the other. But that's kind of what we're doing. Now, again, we've talked about pushing fire and you know, the experienced guys say, yeah, you can push fire, it's been pushed on me, whatever. One of the things I think is worth considering is, are we injecting air into this fire, into it? So maybe we got control of one room, right? Or maybe this is a warehouse or a hardware store or whatever it might be. Do we have control of the area where we are? And are we blowing air into that underventilated fire that just needs air to light up? So again, there's a lot of variables, but you just need to think about what your line is doing inside the fire. And along with that, we fire service has gotten, I call it over testosterone. We're taught to operate that line in a circle. All of a sudden, it got to be to whip it around as fast as you could. Again, that'll work for a one-room fire. But if you've taken a smoothbore nozzle, you may take a nice Elkhart smoothbore nozzle, like a 15/16, and you want to throw 180 gallons a minute, right? Solid bore. You want to send a big glob of water to, you know, fall on what's burning and extinguish that. Why do you whip that thing around like you're a wild man? Because what you're doing is you're creating little drops. We've almost taken the smoothbore nozzle that we all think is the greatest thing in the world, and it's a great nozzle. And now we've turned it into a fog nozzle, which we were just fighting about 20 years ago. We said never to use. So air entrainment is important, but what's even more important is we really need to know what your nozzle's doing in that fire area. Chris, next slide, please, unless you got some questions.
And by slide 5, where are you? There it is.
Okay, so this is what I call the fire decagon, and in the last probably 10 years, we've gotten a little better understanding of fire attack and that kind of and understanding fire conditions. So again, the fire triangle here is in the center. We all got that in our Proby school, and then UL came along and put it in flow path. But if you study all the stuff that guys like Dan Majikowski and Steve Kerber and those guys have done, there's actually 10 things on this slide, and I can't remember all of them, but there's 10 factors that we need to think about when we're pushing a line in. What's suppression doing? What's ventilation doing? How much CO2? Not that we want to measure it or not that we want to measure it or really deal with it, but we're going to put CO2 on this decagon is this. At 1100 degrees, CO2, carbon dioxide, which is retarding the fire and slowing that fire down, right? CO2, we have CO2 extinguishers. The CO2 is slowing that fire down. At 1100 degrees, it splits into CO. It splits into two CO molecules. Now, my chemist friend from the hazmat team tells me it's not that simple, but there is a chemical change from CO2. He has to balance the equation, but there is a chemical change from CO2 to CO. We know the CO is flammable, and that's one of the things that helps drive flashover. So as you look at this slide, again, there's about 10 factors we need to deal with. That's better. What's the difference in the fuel? What pressures are involved? And again, moving the fire develops that positive or that positive pressure that drives it from one place to another. What's our hose stream doing to that? And you can see the other 10 factors there. The big one, of course, is how is our ventilation coordinated with our fire suppression. So, Chris, I'd like to open up to questions or thoughts, if we could.
All right, had to bring it back to neutral real quick. Hold on one second. Go ahead there, Jerry Herbst.
All right, Jerry, that was tremendous. I wanted to mention Timmy's put up a question, and he's also answered one on the sidebar as you were going along there, and we should acknowledge Tim Pillsworth as one of your cohorts on a lot of the work that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So I'll read it to you. He was answering a question that was brought out if he had done any studies with higher temperatures in fire environments, and Tim answered for you there that was done with ambient air, so that the measurements, we had the ability to do the measurements. The tools that were used would not have worked in a heated environment. That was the question that was posed.
Mm-hmm. It was kind of interesting during the testing we did with our homemade, with our homemade, Rube Goldberg setup. When we used the fog stream, it actually sucked the instrument, which was it's a hooded device about 2 foot long, about 2 foot wide. It sucked it out of the wall and slammed it on the floor behind us. So, we knew that for example, the fog streams were moving a tremendous amount of air. If you look at the UL studies, just with a 150 GPM 1 3/4 line, a fog stream will move around 15,000 cubic feet of air per minute. So, we talk a lot about fire attack. That's kind of one of the things we don't want to use for fire attack. And again, going back 20 years when we were fighting about straight stream and fog, we had a lot of opinions then, and a lot of them were right. But now we've got data to support that. Yeah. So while I'm rolling here, most of what I'm talking about tonight about air and treatment in the UL study, there's only 20 pages of results. It's available on the UL website, firefightersafety.com, and you can really dive in there. And again, we get no excellence without pain, so it takes a lot of time to sit and try to digest that stuff, but it's well worth it.
Hold on one second. I got a couple of questions here now. Eric is asking, hey guys, do you mind touching based on air entrainment from exterior water application. What's your experience with this, Jerry?
I don't have any. we didn't do that. But it's pretty similar, again, from the UL data. It's pretty similar. The further back you are from the opening, the more air gets entrained. And pretty much the numbers, the numbers are the numbers. It's a good question. The other thing that reminds me to mention to you is it almost doesn't matter. The flow in GPMs of water doesn't doesn't drastically affect the airflow. Which you would think it would. You would think a 2.5 would entrain more air than 1 3/4, but it's really how much the stream is broken up. So kind of how wide of a pattern do you have? That's why that half bale, everybody says, can you use a half bale for smooth bore for hydraulic ventilation? Sure. And like I said, you get about 1,000 CFM from that. So again, comparing that to like an electric smoke ejector or an electric fan, it's a lot less than that, but hell, it's better than nothing if that's what you got.
Sure.
I just threw up Joe's question. Basically, you just touched on that. Have there been any studies or any noticeable difference at higher flow rates or larger hand lines? And it sounds like no.
Well, no. That actually, in the UL study, they did 1 3/4 and 2.5. So again, I encourage you to look at that. The air entrainment study was part of the fire attack study that Steve was kind enough to let me be a small part of.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. James is asking, Jerry, your measurements of airflow during your test are at ambient temperatures. Were there any tests completed with elevated temperatures?
No, as Timmy was saying, our instruments would have just gotten, excuse me, our instruments would have just gotten torn up. So we didn't do any of that, and that's kind of where we stopped. We didn't do any master stream flow either.
Mm-hmm.
This is subject in itself. Absolutely.
How about, this is kind of interesting too, and I'm guessing, knowing your stuff that you didn't, but I'd be interested in any experience you would think, or if you have any experience with calves, would that affect any air entrainment? With basically calves being a mixture of foam, water, and air, handling a calf's line definitely feels different than handling a water line. If you know of any work that's been done or any tribal knowledge of calves and training more air than a solid stream or a straight stream or a fog stream.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I've been to 2 fires with calves. They were both training fires, and it worked really well on a dozen mattresses in a World War II wood frame building at Fort Indian Town Gap, and I was just amazed at how well it worked. And we lit the whole building up, and the fire just kind of laughed at the calves. It didn't do anything. So no, I'm sorry, I can't give you any guidance on that.
Okay.
Jerry, where's this go next? What do you see as the next logical step as you start to take these pieces out and we can now quantify some of the data that we were speculating on earlier?
Jerry, I don't know if there's any hard projects we've got going for it now, but I think what the fire service needs to do, and it's just my humble mental dribblings, is we need to link this data to our experience. And then take it forward. You got the best nozzle in the world in your hands. Are you doing the best thing in the world with it that you can do for the people that are in that building or for your brother and sister firemen? So I think it's great. It's like buying a treadmill, but if you don't run on it, forget it. You're not getting any benefit out of it. So we've got the treadmill. Jerry, I think that's a great point that we need to start digesting it. It's hard. It takes time. It takes discussion, and just because one guy has an opinion that's different than yours doesn't mean he's an idiot and you're a genius.
Yep.
Talk it over and work it out.
I want to hear Jerry real quick before you jump on. I would say, there's a lot of guys and gals watching here that, I mean, we're going pretty deep tonight on a pretty geeky topic of air entrainment. And, coming to the firehouse the next day or texting your buddy or whatever and going, hey, man, I watched this thing on air entrainment. And they're going to go, what are you talking about, right? And I will, if you move the string going in different patterns, can affect how much air you're putting in to a room of contents fire. What would you suggest for a good? How do you guys show this to your members, right? So I saw this topic. I watched the video. This is really interesting. I get what you're saying. How do I go and show this to other people in my fire department? I mean, you showed how you kind of set up the streamers with some flagging tape and some kite string and whatever else. What would you suggest to our viewers right now of saying, hey, we showed you all this, the facts and the data, but here's how to set up a very rudimentary test to show your members
Sure, Chris, I should have probably mentioned this earlier on. Actually, it was Chris Flatley that came up with Mason twine and survey tape. So you can go to your local hardware store, get a roll of Mason twine because that doesn't stretch at all and it's easy to use. Get a roll of survey tape, which was the tape you saw in the Brass Tacks and Hard Facts video. Get an acquired structure or go to your burn building, your fire training center, and string the stuff up. And what you can do is you can take like a 1-inch PVC pipe and cut it an inch or so longer than your window frames, bend it, put it in an open window, hang your survey tape on that, and that'll give you an idea of how much, kind of just generally how much air is moving and which direction. You can do the same thing. You can span your burn room with it, put them in a couple of different windows and doors. You can put it down the hallway, put a couple of those down the hallway. Again, it's just a 1-inch piece of PVC. You cut it a little bit longer, bend it, let it spring back up in there. It doesn't damage the building, and you can move them around. So I would encourage folks to just do that. No fire, no smoke. We tried everything. We tried fire, we tried smoke, we tried theatrical smoke, and we couldn't get anything to really demonstrate what we wanted. So, like I said, Mason twine survey tape, some 1-inch PVC. Go to your building, try a straight stream, try a fly, try all these different things, and just see what happens. And it'll be very interesting. The Brass Tacks video kind of summarizes a lot of this, and I'd encourage folks to look at that as well. It really kind of crams a lot of information in 6 minutes. And if you do these tests that Chris was suggesting, I think what you'll find is the air movement in the building is not what you thought, is not what you're taught. Again, I was taught, hey, fog stream, everything goes out the window. Well, try that, and you'll be surprised that it's really a lot more complicated than that. But good thought, Chris.
Yeah, I think that'd be really, we get a lot. I see it rolling around on the internet a lot of, I can't hydraulically ventilate with a smoothbore nozzle. Well, can you? And there's different tactics and techniques of taking the tip off and half bailing, rotating the stream, whatever it might be. I think setting something up like this, as Jerry was saying, you cut that PVC just a little bit wider than your window, and then it kind of bows and snaps right into place so it'll stay there. Tie some streamers to it. That could be really good on that side. And again, looking at the graph that we have up right now, again, showing a solid stream versus a straight stream, a little less air than, the solid stream, less air than straight stream, but really the pattern didn't have a whole impact of what was going on versus just keeping it fixed. I mean, typically a hit and move or a push will be a wall ceiling wall type technique or an O pattern, and essentially pushing all that hot gas and everything out in front of you as you go. And I think it'd be easy to demonstrate with this by pushing a hallway and putting streamers at a outlet of a bedroom or something like that.
Yeah, Jerry, you brought up something, and you and I've talked about this, and I think agreed on it for a long time. Is the value of this type of training in the absence of smoke and fire. You know, I like to use this analogy of, you know, most people understand the headline, but very few people can discuss the article. This, you're going deep at the firefighter level, understanding how you're impacting your environment, and that should be done at a much slower pace and a very obvious, well lit, and high recognition pace. This is, you know, you hear a lot of senior guys, and we use the term in my firehouse all the time: be a gentleman, right? You don't need to be having convulsions with a hand. You're holding a nozzle. You're impacting that environment, and that, you know, that's what you've documented. But the training aspect of it, I've found tremendous value in just kicking it back. Okay, it's not dramatic. We're not pushing a hot haul. Let's understand what's going on. It's just like the water mapping. It's the same thing. Slow it down and let your mind go wild. You hang sheets, hang tape, whatever you have with you. But the idea is to slow the firefighter down enough so that they're comprehending what's going on, so it triggers when you are in the superheated hallway making a push.
Yeah, Jerry, we've talked about this a lot, and I think you're exactly right. We used to, you know, everybody wants to train engine companies under smoke and fire conditions. Well, if you're training your engine company guys, you can't coach them if you're trying to talk to them through a mask. You can't coach them if you can't see what they're doing right or wrong. So you break it down, and like you said, Jerry, you just take one section at a time. Let's look at this. Let's think a little bit. You know, what are we doing to the environment? And air entrainment sure isn't the most exciting thing, but it's one part of what we're doing in the fire environment. You know, Jerry, you mentioned water mapping. That's the same. You know, just let's discharge water in this building and see where it goes. You know, if the couch is burning in the center of the room, and you point that nozzle to the ceiling, guess what? There ain't a whole lot of water coming down on that couch.
Right. Exactly.
So we need to think about what we're doing and kind of evaluate it. You know, I think we've over testosteroned it. We're like macho guys. We're going to come in and kick this fire's butt, but we got to think. You know, a boxer doesn't swing for the knockout punch. He jabs a little. He jabs to keep that guy away from him, to think a little bit and looks for the right opportunity. We need to do the same thing. It's hard, you know. It's a lot more fun, you know. Look, everybody wants to be on a nozzle and be inside and put the fire out, you know. But especially in training, yeah, it's critical.
You take these steps, you're just going to be better at it. That's the whole point. There's the difference in the depth of understanding, is taking the time to understand how your impact on the environment, as opposed to just going bravado. And that's evolved. It's evolved at the same time that the fire's evolved over the years, right? You know, heat release rates are a lot more aggressive. We really, we have to capture a window of opportunity. It's like you said before, you know, in a room of content fire or a couple rooms, this is not a large flow event, but you can turn it into much more of an event than it should be with some very simple mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you get to, like you said, Jared, under those control conditions, you get to look and see what's going on. You'd be surprised. You know, you'd be really surprised. I just want to mention this as well. Captain Flatley, retired FDNY, he always said this. He always said he wanted to take in 180 gallons a minute, you know, out of 15/16 with a off an 1 3/4. And he said, you know, I can make that flow 90 gallons a minute if I have to. And everybody looks at him and goes, "Hey, Chris, how do you do that?" He goes, "I flow for 30 seconds." So, you know,
the wisdom of tough.
that's tough. He's got it right down simple, you know. But he brings up a great point: is that, you know, why not take in as much water as you can and use what you need? But if you got a little extra, a little reserve isn't bad, you know.
Yep.
So yeah.
Sage advice.
Yes, sir.
Jerry, you mentioned at the beginning, just to get maybe off topic a little bit, because I know a lot of our viewers are kind of nozzle nerds and readers of Andy's work. But you mentioned, you know, you being from Rockland County, doing work with Andy Fredericks back in the day. Any nuggets, stories, anything you can share maybe with Andy, with our viewers that might like that?
You know, I think and I think Jerry just kind of alluded to it. It's being a student of the game. Andy was always a student of the game, you know. So he had an open mind. And like I said, we would try different hose loads, we would try different nozzles, and we just tried it to see what would happen. And again, as Jerry said, we tried it under non-fire conditions, so we wanted to see what was going on, you know. Once we understood that, then we move on to trying under a fire condition. So just, I think what I learned most from Andy was there's nothing more important than what we do. You know, our safety is, you know, we're putting ourselves in harm's way. And we need to think about and evaluate and train and make sure we're doing it the best way we can. You know, he researched all those articles for fire engineering. And he was probably the ultimate nozzle nerd, you know. And we need to do that. We need to know what our flows are, and we need to know what we're doing instead of just, you know, going in there like a blowhard and going, yeah, we're going to put this fire out. Well, the fire's a complicated place. You know, we'll talk tonight about airflow, just how complicated that is, you know, and some of the guys that are watching ask some good questions. What about heat? What about smoke? Yeah, what about that? We haven't got that far yet. So from Andy, I'm sure he'd say be a student of the game.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw up a question here that might be a good summary to everything we've talked about, because we've been kind of all over the place with this kind of topic. Is from Todd. It's going to cut off, but I'll read it anyway. So I'm confused. Do we move the nozzle? Do we cool the 6 sides of the room, or go straight for the throat and kill the beast? A lot of different theories being shared that goes against what many people said in previous live episodes. I guess to sum it up, Jerry Knapp, is, you know, if you're pushing a hallway tonight, what are you going to do?
Yeah, we're not saying don't move the nozzle. Of course, we want to distribute that water all around. We want to cool the surfaces, just like Todd's saying. We want to cool those 6 surfaces. Do we want to rotate that nozzle at like 1,000 RPMs? No, probably not. We probably want to do maybe 10 or 20 RPMs, you know, around in a circle. When, you know, what we've said tonight shouldn't change anything that you do. It just should make you more aware of what you're doing in the fire environment. So you're going to gain control of that room, and then go for the throat and kill the beast, like you said. I think there's something really interesting in here. I'm glad Todd brought this up. After we had a number of fatal fires after the one I talked to you about, and it really got me thinking. You know, we hear about the Red Devil, and you know, it really, these fires haunted me because the fire was so devastating, so deceitful, that how could it kill these people? How could it kill these kids? You know. And I was at FDIC a couple of years ago, and I forget the fellow's name, but he said fire reacts to the conditions that it's given. So if it's given the right conditions to grow quickly, it does. If it's given the right conditions to get smaller and get extinguished, it does that. So this idea that it's a beast and it's you know, it's a thinking enemy, it's not. It's not. It's a physical phenomenon that's gonna react to the conditions that we give it. And for example, I go back to, and I don't know what the answer to this is, but I'd ask everybody to think about it. If we're going into this multi-room building and we extinguish one room and we're pushing down a hallway, whatever, are we pushing air into another room that lights it up? You can't answer that question, but I want you to consider those things. So 2 things I like guys to take away from this is this. If you want to move air, if the situation you're in and you want to move air and push it away from you, like maybe you have a big vent on the other side, there's a big window, a big door, whatever it is, you know, operate that nozzle and you know, quickly, or open up to a little fog and you'll push most of that out. If you don't want to move air, you know, the truck for some reason hasn't got the window or the door in front of you, you don't want to move a lot of air because you'll stir it up and make fireman soup. So you're going to be a little slower with the nozzle. Obviously not going to consider going to a fog pattern inside. So if you want to move air, you know how to do it. If you don't want to move air, you hold that line kind of steady. And I think this is a really good question. You can love or hate the transitional fire attack, and certainly nobody is saying to do that all the time. But look, everybody shoots career ball, power. And Bill Guston I think had a key point to this. He said his father worked in Chicago in the 50s and 60s, and if they couldn't get in right away, they call it a dash from the outside, right? Which was a transitional fire attack. So in terms of air movement, what do they teach you for transitional fire attack? Hold the nozzle steady. Don't move it, because we don't want to push air into that fire. So what I want guys to take away from this is, do I move the nozzle? Don't I move the nozzle? What do I do with the pattern? Do I push air? Don't I push air? And it's up to you to make that decision when you're on the fire ground. But you can't make that decision without this understanding, which isn't very exciting, but it will be very exciting on the fire ground for you.
Yeah, that's taken away. It's another thing to be cognizant of when you're at the nozzle firefighter position. How fast I'm moving this, what I'm doing with my pattern. Of course, you're going to push a hallway, but how fast I move that line. If I go crazy, I might push more air than I want, but you have to kind of be aware of that. This is another factor other than just GPM, nozzle reaction, line management, yada yada, goes down the list. Is you are entraining air into that compartment, and how fast you move that line or what pattern it's on is going to entrain more air than not. And is that a good or bad thing on what's on the other end of that nozzle?
I think Chris, that's exactly right. What's key is this air entrainment thing isn't everything. It's just one small part. So you're in a hallway that you're talking about, and you're hearing on your radio that the truck hasn't got the ventilation done. You don't want to move air. It's as simple as that. You don't want to move, but you want to get water into the compartment. On the flip side, if you hear the truck's got a big opening for you, or you can see a big opening, or somehow there's an opening, you want to move air. So, this is something, these facts you can use on the fire ground with all the others. And I think that's one of the things that drives me crazy about firefighters. Everybody's looking for a silver bullet. Well, forget it. There ain't one. My first day in recruit class, the instructor came in, God bless him. His name was Bill Herman. He wrote THINK, think, on the board. He didn't even introduce himself. He said, guys, you go to a fire, you got to think. You got to think. It's your most important weapon. It's your most powerful weapon. Evaluating conditions, taking what's going on around you, good size up. He goes, you got to think. So that's what we're saying here. Air entrainment, it's a small part. It's a small slice of what's going on, but you got to understand it.
Mm-hmm. You hear these, not to beat the dead horse here, but these terms of mastering the craft and things of that nature that are taglines for so many of the micro conferences and things that are available for training now. And this is exactly what we're talking about. No one ever said that it was just as simple as slapping a mask on, opening up a line, and you're going to be a hero. You need to understand your job. It's really just that simple. And the ones that don't are the ones that end up in compromised situations. Mm-hmm. You can, if you're not thinking the fire, you're going to get ahead of yourself. Your biggest primary responsibility, in addition to making a rescue and getting yourself to the position where you can eliminate the problem, is to control the environment. It's a dynamic environment. And it's like, I love that perspective you put up there, Jerry. It's going to do what you give it the opportunity to do.
Mm-hmm. I just think Chad's comment up, and it's really applicable what we're talking about tonight in society. With all these studies that we're getting, is we always want the black and the white. Do I do this or do I do that? Is it an EMS thing because now we're used to algorithms? Patients doing this, I do this. If they're not doing that, I do that, right? Mm-hmm. Versus, no, every one of these is a little bit different, and you have to use, these studies and paired with your experience, as we talked about earlier in the show, to understand that gray and how it it can change, and how you might have had the exact same fire and you did this, but it's not going to work on this one.
Yeah, it's true. We you know, just like Andy said, we need to be a student of the game, and you know, it's painful, it's slow, and you know, we all want to have that thrill, but you get that thrill, you get that good stop by knowing your flow, knowing what you're doing with your nozzle, you know, picking the right nozzle, that whole thing. So it's a package, and I think it's important that we understand, like I said before, air entrainment's a small slice, and frankly, it's kind of a boring slice, but it's a slice you need to know, and you need to have. I like to say, you like to have it in your back pocket, and you pull that knowledge out at the right time, and you do the right thing based on, you know, your knowledge and your background, and you know, being a student of the game. So.
You know, Jerry, we're winding down on our hour here. You never really gave your bio, but what I'll give you the opportunity to do that. But I think what people should take from that is your commitment to this subject matter is later in your career, but it would have impacted the performance earlier in your career. So that, you know, there's what to take from this. And the fact that it never ends. You know, Andy's would say, be a student of the game. Look at where you are in your fire career now, tackling this. That's what it's about. It's a deeper understanding of things that we've assumed, and we all know what happens when we assume, right? So we're just documenting. So how long have you been on the job? How long in the firehouse?
Oh, I've been a firefighter EMT for about 45 years. I'm in suburbs in New York here, so we have a heavy FDNY influence, which is good and bad. Currently the chief of hazmat in Rockland, so that's always an adventure. It's a little different than firefighting. There's, you know, a lot of detective work in a hazmat call, and you know, we depend on our instruments quite a bit, you know. So I've been fortunate. Fire engineering has printed my mental dribblings pretty regular over the years. Chris Flatley and I just finished a book on house fires. We kind of put everything. We kind of made it as a reference book. We like to think it's everything you need to know, but it's a lot of what you need to know. It's certainly not everything about residential fires. It's available through Fire Engineering books, but it's broken down into chapters. So they're standalone chapters. They're scenario based. So we give you a scenario, and then, for example, search and rescue. How would you conduct a search and rescue operation at this fire? And then we go through the chapter, and then at the end we discuss what we think is a good solution. We usually provide a couple of solutions, you know, because there's one's not always the right answer. We included in the book, I think it was Chief Coleman did a lot of great work on search and rescue, so we included that stuff. So kind of a one-stop shopping for house fires, and so that was kind of my capstone project so far.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Tremendous book.
So Jerry, so you mentioned the book that just came out last year, House Fires, available from Fire Engineering. Where else can we find you? I know you're part of the strategic fire training cadre. So that's Jeff Diedrich, Micah Heidemann, and that gang.
Yep.
As we all know right now, the conferences are kind of on a halt. You also teach at FDIC.
You can get a hold of me through Strategic Fire. Jeff has a website up that's pretty good that Micah runs for us. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy. I'm retired, so I get up in the morning, decide what I want to do, not what I have to do. So if you want to email me, my email is J for Jerry, my last name Knapp, Knapp 23 at AOL. It's jknapp23 at AOL.com. So I'd be happy to help you out any way I could. No, I can't send you a free book. I wish I could send everybody one, but I can't, Jerry can't give everybody a free nozzle. I can't give everybody a free book. I wish I could, you know. But, so that's how to get a hold of me. Please don't hesitate to call or contact me.
I would also encourage everybody watching to go to Fire Engineering's website or Google and look up the work that Jerry's done, particularly the air entrainment stuff. There's articles on that, and Tim Pillsworth and Chris Flatley, of course, and as well as the hose kinking articles is very good. I did just post your email that you just gave us in the feed there, so everybody has that.
Yeah, we'll hold back on your phone numbers and address, though, Jer.
Okay.
And as Jeff Diedrich just said, you know, we give you a lot of credit. You're still sticking to that AOL email address. I don't know if you just got a closet full of those CDs that you're still using to get your monthly AOL. I didn't know they were still around. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I got to jump over to Gmail. I'm the good news about the virus is it's forcing me to be able to do stuff like this. Hell, 2 weeks ago I couldn't even thought about doing this, and now here I are. You know, so
keep it. I like it. It's OG. But anyway, Jerry, we want to thank you for coming on tonight and letting us understand a little bit about what air entrainment is and how it can affect what we're doing on the end of the nozzle. For those of you watching, if you've missed this, if you caught a run during this, if you want to show this to tomorrow's crew or another member of your department, it will be up on our Elkhart Brass YouTube channel tomorrow. Any of our Brass Tacks videos can be viewed at BrassTacksHardFacts.com. They're all there. Any other technical info you can get at ElkhartBrass.com. See what we have new to offer. We are on every social channel, so go there, find us. We're always posting stuff. And then the other last thing here is we are a proud member of the Safe Fleet family. So, and our Safe Fleet Fire, EMS, and Industrial Group, that is us. FRC, which does lighting, pressure governors, displays, flow meters. I guarantee you have something on your rig that they have made. Foam Pro, if you're doing foam systems, proportioners, refill systems. Obviously, Elkhart Brass, we have a whole offering, monitors, nozzles, you name it. And ROM, the door people. So roll up shutter doors, they're the name in town. So go to safefleet.net/FEI. That's our landing page for the group. If you're speccing out a new rig, go there, check out and see what we have new to offer. I guarantee there's something there that'll pique your interest, or reach out to us. I want to thank both you guys for jumping on, and I hope everybody stays healthy, be well, stay safe out there, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
all right, thank you.